So my name's Kristen Farley, and I'm going to start out here. What we have, for those of you following on your little map, I was the geology, which was the last station, and we decided that it made more sense for me to give just a really brief geologic framework as you go to hear more about water and more about sediment. But since I know that's probably those are big issues right now, and those are probably some of the things you're here to hear about, I'll be pretty quick on the geology, and Adam's going to interrupt me and add anything he thinks you need to know as well, because he's been hearing it. I wish we had better weather, but hopefully you don't need to take my word for it, and hopefully most of you know there are mountains that way. Really great mountains. If you don't know that, well, look, next time it's clear. But the most important points I can make about the geology here as they affect these issues are, anytime you have really big mountains, something big happened to get them there. Those are mountains that are made of very old, loosely granite type rocks. But geologists like to argue about what is a granite, and they would tell you those aren't exactly granites, but for our purposes we can say very old granitic rocks have been pushed up. Anytime you've got rocks moving up, something big is happening. And this is the geologic map, which probably looks like some Andy Warhol thing to you, but the important point to know is this came off the San Gabriel Mountains. All these little lines are the faults that the San Gabriel Mountains came up on. And so it doesn't matter, basically this whole region is just bound by very, very active faults. They're some of the fastest rising mountains in the world, actually, the San Gabriel. Whenever you get mountains rising up really fast, you get mountains shedding off their material really fast, because that's gravitationally unstable to have all that there. And so that's what's really important for here, is that we're shedding off a whole lot of material really, really rapidly. And those sediments, geologists use the term sediment to include everything from boulders, car-sized, house-sized boulders, to mud and sand. And closer to the mountains are bigger boulders. As you get further and further down, you get more mud and sand. And so this basin, all of these colors down here are the sediments, boulders, mud, sand, whatnot, filling in this space. In fact, the whole front of the San Gabriel Valley and on. A couple important things about that sediment. I said it's coming off really, really rapidly. So that can be pretty catastrophic if you have a house or property right where all of that sediment is flowing. Fire plays a big role in that, as we saw recently, that the mountains are held together less well. It's also generally very, very permeable. So water can percolate down through that sand if we allow it to. If we fill it with parking lots and channelize all the sediment, a lot less of it settles into the ground. So that's the big picture. The mountains are rising really fast, which means the sediment's coming off really fast. And when we're at that interface where people live right against the mountains, it presents big issues to deal with, big geologic issues and big issues in terms of how do we deal with that rapidly flowing sediment and water, and maintain the ability to percolate into the groundwater, which is what our water guy is going to talk about next. But let me just add, are there any other geologic type questions?
How fast are they rising?
They are rising about, it doesn't sound all that fast, I think about 6 centimeters. Do you know the number? 2.6 centimeters a year is the most, about an inch a year. Yeah, which,
that's a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah. No, it's about the same rate your fingernails grow. So, I would highly recommend, if you're interested in the geology, I think it should be required reading for everyone in Los Angeles County. John McPhee, who can make anything interesting, wrote an amazing essay called Los Angeles Against the Mountains. It's the third essay in this book that is compiled, called The Control of Nature. And it talks about how the mountains are rising, and it talks about Pasadena, it talks about these canyons, and it's absolutely an excellent read. So I'll encourage you to get that book and read that essay. Do you want more? I teach at PCC. So, but working for the city.
So I'm Brad Bowman. I'm the engineering manager for the water division for the city of Pasadena. So I can answer any water questions from the Colorado to microorganisms or whatever you want to talk about. But I thought we'd talk a little bit about our groundwater basin. And our groundwater basin is called the Raymond Basin. Groundwater basin. How's it get that name? Oh, okay, a groundwater basin. So we pump about 40% of our drinking water comes from the ground, underground. We have our groundwater wells, and so I'm going to get to that. I'll show you in just a minute about that. But underneath the ground, so if you drilled a hole down in, you would get, you'd go down maybe 150 feet, and then you'd hit water, which is saturated, the ground is saturated, and then you go down another, maybe 400, 500 feet here, and then you'd hit bedrock. And so in that area where the water is saturated, so if you think of taking some sand in a container, you can pour water on top of it, right? And that water would filter into sand. So that's really what a groundwater basin is, just the saturated sand and rocks and things that are the sediments. And that's an aquifer. That's a good job. Yeah, that's a groundwater aquifer. Yeah, see, he knows. So, this is just the boundary of the Raymond Basin. And you can see, and because of the Raymond Fault. So, here's the Raymond Fault. So, do you know where the Raymond Fault is?
Yes, along Huntington.
It kind of goes along Huntington. So, let's see, it starts over here. So, what's the old hotel, what's the Ritz Carlton now, the Langham? You notice, as you drive past that, all of a sudden you go down a hill.
That should surprise you. When you're putting on your geologic minds and you're driving along on a big flat, everything's kind of flat, and all of a sudden there's a big hill. That's a geologic surprise. Those hills don't happen without something sudden causing them to go up.
Yeah. Same thing at Huntington Library. There's a hill. So this Raymond Fault starts over in Arcadia. It goes all the way over to San Rafael Hills. So,
what's the sense of movement on that fault? Sorry.
What?
Sorry, what's the sense of movement on that fault?
Did it go this way, or?
I think it's got a combination.
It's kind of a combination.
Which side is up?
North is up.
Oh, okay. So we're up here. This is down. This is Huntington Library, so to speak, down there. Okay. So, and so let me show you what it looks like. So if I take a cut from this A all the way up to La Cañada, all the way through, and see this little monk hill thing right here? And go down through the fault. Okay. I've got my cutaway here. So here's the cutaway from La Cañada all the way down to Arcadia. And so this is the soil in here, and the water sits in that soil about this deep, and we have our groundwater wells. And then there's areas where there's some clay where the water doesn't flow. And then, all of a sudden there's this hill underneath the ground, and this is a Washington Elementary that sits on top of that. Have you ever gone from Washington Elementary and then down to Washington Boulevard? It's that little hill. So there's an underground outcropping, and then goes down, and then the groundwater basin's deeper, and that groundwater sits in there. And we make sure we don't pump more out than what is coming off the mountains and percolating into the ground. So,
Is there a limit how much you're supposed to pump so if folks downstream get some water?
yeah, so all these agencies, so in a sense, that water comes down off the mountain, or you irrigate and sits in there, and then it gets stopped here. So the water elevation above the fault is higher than below the fault. So we pump this in, and then some water can leak over or leak through the fault. But so that's
I'll
like
just interrupt with faults often form an impermeable barrier because you've got that motion along them, and it causes it causes like clay-sized particles to form, and then you get a clay layer. So sometimes a fault will be two different rock types where it comes up against something that's less permeable, or sometimes, my understanding of the Raymond Fault is just that the motion has created an impermeable clay layer which traps the groundwater north of the Raymond Fault.
We're saying we don't have any more water than
Yeah, so what we call it is our safe yield. So the Raymond Basin Management Board tells us how much we can pump every year. And we have certain rights. And these are all the agencies that have water rights. So you ever heard of Lincoln Avenue Water Company, Rubio, Las Flores Water Company? There's a bunch of little water companies there, Madre, Arcadia. Sunny Slope, there's Sunny Slope's little thing. And so each agency can only pump out so much water. And that accounts for Pasadena about 40% of our water. Well, yes, actually we are. The groundwater levels continue to go down. And so the Raymond Basin a couple of years ago put a restriction, so now we can pump 30% less water now. So they reduced our amount we can pump out by 30%. Yeah.
Because of reduced influx?
Yes, well, the water rights were set in the 50s and 40s, and since then there's a lot more asphalt and buildings and that, and so there's less water getting in the ground.
It's an interesting balance between the natural inflow of water to infiltrate the ground and the potentially destructive flood behavior of those waters. And so Los Angeles, one way to prevent that destructive flooding is to get the water to the ocean as fast as possible. And we've done that by channelizing the rivers, and in fact we've done a pretty good job of protecting against flooding. But in doing that, we've also allowed for a lot less water, groundwater recharge in the water.
What percent?
Yeah.
From the unusual. The other California communities get 40% of their water from their own.
Well, it's water, it's first come, first served kind of thing. So it's the fact that's what Pasadena got years ago before they had the Colorado River Aqueduct and the Northern California Aqueduct. So we have that water right, so to speak, but not other communities. Some of the older communities have more rights, some have less.
But also you have to understand that Pasadena is in a pretty geologically fortuitous setting to have a lot of groundwater because we're right at the base of the mountains. Exactly.
They probably take more water from other sources.
Not as much, so yes, many of them take their water from, I don't know the numbers, you probably know some of the company statistics, but I think Pasadena is among the highest in terms of groundwater percentage. Right?
Yeah,
the city of LA doesn't get,
Yeah, we're in pretty good shape. Yeah, but LA has their, well, why do you think LA is, San Fernando Valley is part of LA? Because San Fernando Valley has a lot of groundwater. Hanson Dam and all that. That's why that's part of LA City. Yeah. Yeah. It's probably 35% maybe. Yeah. So, what do we do to enhance that? Don't want to take too much of your time, but if you walk up the arroyo up here, just by the mouth, you see a series of percolation ponds, and that we divert water out of the stream and fill up these ponds to help save the water. And you know the big JPL parking lot over here? Well, we're going to kick them off the parking lot. And yeah, sorry about that. And put more percolation ponds where their parking is. We're going to upgrade our intake structure to take water out of the stream and then put it in here. We want it to percolate in here because after the water gets past this dam, it's gone pretty much a mostly concrete channel from all the way to the ocean, and it's lost. Yeah. Yeah, so there's okay, right now, as you go across the arroyo, the concrete channel, there's always water running down that. Well, the golf course is planning on digging their pond bigger and deeper, and we're going to start diverting water out of the channel into their pond, and then they're going to have pumps, and then they'll use that to help irrigate their thing. So that's one example.
What percentage of all the water that runs off from the engines to the ocean?
So we probably
by natural causes.
Well, there's a lot of natural percolation that just comes off the mountain and into the basin. But we probably here capture about 1,000 acre-feet a year. But LA County assumes there's like 6,000 acre-feet that goes through the dam. So they're figuring that, and some of it, you know, when you have a big rain and there's nothing you can do, but they figure there was a way to capture, we could probably capture about 4,000 acre-feet. 4,000 more acre-feet. Yeah, that's what this drainage basin could produce more. So that's like 10%